folks, welcome. Today we are going to go over how to calculate your keto recipe macros for when you meal plan. Now if you saw my last video, which you should definitely check out because we made something super duper uber delicious, which was that Philly cheesesteak casserole, I mentioned that I wanted to go through with you guys how to calculate the nutrition information when you make your own recipes. Now when you look up recipes online for keto or any other type of diet really, they probably show you the nutritional information, and you might be wondering, how did they calculate all of that, when there's so much information out there? Well, today I really wanted to go through with you guys a step-by-step, really clean set of instructions that you can use to quickly calculate your nutritional information of the meals that you make. And yes, you can make a big recipe for the entire week and figure out just how much you're eating day to day. So again, it's perfect for meal planning. If you like to cook all your food on a Sunday, spend an hour or two cooking and then divide that food in the fridge and put it in Tupperware, this is how you can calculate your nutritional info. So first, I want to go over some tips that I think will definitely help you calculate your nutritional info. So think of these as guidelines before we actually get started with the step-by-step instructions. The first tip is that you should definitely use grams. Now, if you find this math problem, because it tricked me, I was trying to figure out how many inches there were in 5 feet and 11 inches, like total inches. That confused me for like a good day or so. So I had to ask my brother what was going on. But if that confuses you, that illustrates the reason why I don't like to use ounces and pounds, is because you're using, 16 ounces to a pound. When you use grams, you can just use 1 by 1 gram. You can be on the decimal system, you can use 10, 100, whatever, and you get a much more complete picture, I think. So I like to use grams. Also, it just seems more precise to me to use grams because they're such a small unit of measurement than saying something is 7 ounces and 3/4. Like, what does that even mean? Come on. And once you get used to using the grams, it really becomes a lot more simple to figure out what an amount of grams looks like. For example, I know that 28 grams is about an ounce. And I know that to me, that's like a serving of cheese. That's how I just memorize it. So you kind of come up with your own way to realize what the actual amount of grams are. If you're like out at a restaurant and you're just trying to guesstimate how much you're eating, I think that it can be done a lot more easier once you realize how to use grams. So along with the measurements that you should use, tip 2 is to avoid cups and tablespoons and teaspoons if you can. They're not based on weight, they're based on volume. So to me, I don't use them at all. I did like my first month starting out on keto, but once I realized it was a lot easier just to plug in the numbers of something instead of saying, is this a cup and a half? Well, I'm not quite sure. Avoid cups, tablespoons, teaspoons, and all that. Remember, you want to go based on weight because that's more precise. So how are you going to measure the weight of your food? Well, tip 3 is that you need to invest in a food scale. I have 2. I bought them from Walmart. They were like $15 to $20, so it's not a huge investment, but it makes calculating and managing your intake so much easier. I use my food scale every single day, maybe 10 times a day. The battery lasts me like 4 to 5 months, and it's such a great tool to have with you in the kitchen. It does not take long to measure food. You put your plate on, you clear out the measurement, you tare it, and then you add your food, and then you know exactly what you're eating. And so if you struggle with overeating like I did and still do, having that scale can help you keep on track as well. Tip number 4 is that once you really come up with a recipe that you like, write down all the measurements of everything that you have so that you can use it again and again, because we're going to be adding these calculated recipes to our food log apps. So if you alter it, you want to be able to recalculate things and name it something different in your food log app. Tip number 5 is to write down the ingredients and the amounts of ingredients that you're using as you're cooking, because it might change, it might not be exact, but once you figure out the formula that you like, you'll have the precise numbers right there. As I was making the Philly cheesesteak casserole, you might be able to see here, I started with an amount of zucchini and then I crossed it out and I said, nope, I don't want that much. So I changed it from 450 to 375. And so having a little sticky or a little piece of paper to write down your measurements is very handy as you cook. Do it while you're cooking. Also, be sure to measure while you're cooking. The next tip is that you need a food log app. Now, you could write everything down and have like a big book of food and the measurements, and you could calculate it on a calculator and then write down your daily intake. But why do that when it can literally take you less than a minute to log your entire day's worth of food, especially once you get the hang of it? Even if you're a newbie when it comes to logging food on a food log app, I like Lose It. Hey, Lose It. Even if you're beginning to log your food on a food log app, it really doesn't take that long, and the learning curve is super duper simple. And then once you build that library, logging food is just going to be a non-issue, and it's going to be so easy. The food log app will quickly calculate any measurement that you put into it as long as you're using the same type of measurement. So if you're using weight measurements, you can put in grams or ounces or whatever. If you're using cups and things, you can put in teaspoons and tablespoons, although again, I don't recommend using cups and things. So I would definitely use the weight measurements, but it calculates everything. So as soon as you change an amount, it's going to change all the nutritional information for you. And it's so simple. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Allie. I was worried about getting a food log because it seems complicated. You've changed my life forever. Although I'm sure most of you already have downloaded a food log app. So please comment below for those people who are kind of afraid to start logging their food that it's simple. It helps you stay on track, and it tracks your progress, which is also very useful and motivating. I love motivation. Thank you. Motivation is the key for weight loss. Now, my next tip, some people may not agree with, but I say don't worry too much about small variations in brands and varieties of food when it comes to logging them in your food app. For example, I like cheese and I eat all types of cheese. Sometimes I eat Gouda, sometimes it's cream cheese, sometimes it's cheddar. So I'm not going to create a different category in my food library on my food log app for every single variety. For example, if I have Gouda in there, I'm not going to add a new smoked Gouda. If they look pretty similar on the nutritional information, I'm just going to enter the smoked Gouda as Gouda. Same thing for like chicken breasts. You know, if it's all boneless and skinless, it's probably going to be about the same. As long as it's not processed and it's just about the same, it's just as good as using all the different varieties in your food log app. So maybe that package of meat that I bought the other day for that Philly cheesesteak casserole, which was amazing, it might have had a bit of different fat content just based on the veins of fat that was in it. So even if it is the same brand, it might not have the exact same nutritional info. So remember, you cannot be 100% precise, but we can be pretty precise. And much more precise than just guesstimating and not logging anything. Like a true heathen, as my grandma would say. I don't think you're a heathen. And my last tip is that you should always measure raw or as close to raw and unprocessed as you can. Now, sometimes that can't be avoided. Sometimes, you know, I make a whole roast and I could, you know, write down how much I bought at the store and then divide it and figure it out. But sometimes, you know, it's easier to avoid that. But I would say most of the time I measure raw, especially when it comes to making recipes. Remember, when you cook meats especially, the fat's gonna leak out a little bit, but also lots of water. So even if you're losing that water and you just measure the final product, you're actually eating more of the fat and protein. So I would say just measure raw and be done with it. But again, it may not be practical for every single day. Okay, so let's actually get to the step-by-step instructions on how to calculate a recipe's macros and calories, because those are really important for weight loss. I say it all the time. You don't believe me? Oh. Now, once you write down all of the ingredients and the amounts that you use in your recipe, because you wrote them down as you were cooking, you're going to write them all down with the nutritional info. So after you've written down all of the names of the ingredients that you used in your recipe, you are going to use your food log app and you're going to plug in the amounts that you used for your recipe. So for example, because I used 936 grams of that beef the other day, that means I'm going to write down 1,170 calories, 37.6 grams of fat, 0 grams of carbs, and 209 grams of protein across. And I'm going to do that for all of the foods listed here. So this is where a food log app can be super handy for calculating your nutritional and macro information for your recipes. Just a tip, every time I make an entry in my food log app, I go ahead and I subtract out the fiber because I don't count that, I do net carbs. So all of my information here is already net carbs, because that's how it is in my food log app. Super simple. Now again, this is why it's so important that you don't use cups along with ounces and grams, because if you keep it all grams, it just keeps it more straightforward. And if you use cups, then you're not going to be able to get the weight of the entire recipe. We need that down here so that you can enter that number in your food log app when you go to log your recipe. It's all coming together. So yes, again, list all of the info that you want. You need your weight. I stick to calories, fat, carbs, and protein. Well, net carbs. But if you want to include things like sodium or fiber and do it that way, that's up to you. Okay, the next step is now to go down the columns and add all of this information together. So for example, I'm going to add all of my weights to come up with 2,354 grams for the entire casserole's weight. And I do that with calories and fat, net carbs, and protein. That means that you'll come up with your totals here. Now, this is what you're going to add into your food log app, is these totals. You don't want to have to divide it all down and get to 1 gram of carb, because then you're adding in 0.001 and you're rounding. So just add this. So for example, in my food log app, I would put in Philly cheesesteak casserole, and Lose It does the brand, so I would put Allie's. That's what I do. And then I would put in the amount that it asks me for a serving. I would put in 2,354. Now that's not a real serving. That's not what I'm really going to eat. But I'm going to keep all of these in their highest form from the original calculations again, so I'm not rounding anything. And then the last step is that if you looked at this size of casserole and you said, okay, this is going to last me maybe for 5 dinners, Monday through Friday. Then you would just take this number and you would divide it by 5. 2354 divided by 5. Or you think you're going to eat it within 4 days, then divide this number by 4 and just log that every night that you're eating it. If you want to meal prep that way, again, you can always just kind of scoop it out and measure as you go. Just remember the measurements, if you scoop it out as you go, might be a little off because when you cook, things evaporate, the fat comes out, so it might be a little bit different. So it could actually be more precise to divide this by however many days you plan to eat your food. And so when you write down recipes, you want to write down these amounts and make sure that you keep all of this the same the next time you cook it so that you know exactly what you're eating. And you want to write this down on your recipe card so that you can divide that however you want. So if instead of having 5 big portions, you wanted 10 small portions, you would just divide this number by 10 and eat that for 10 days. Oh my gosh, it's so simple. Well folks, that's about it for today. I hope that you enjoyed the video and that this was very informative and you saw lots of tips and tricks and guidelines and suggestions that you thought were interesting and helpful. I hope you enjoyed my totally tech setup I got going here. I wanted a whiteboard for so long and I finally have one and I'm so excited to use it. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That would help me out so much. And if you want to find me on social media, I will link all of that down below. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. My name's Allie. Have a good one. Bye.